I'm Nancy, and this is my garden. My husband and I are a couple of retirees, and we've been gardening for over a decade, but we started getting into vertical gardening because, like many people living in suburban neighborhoods, we don't have much room to work with. So raised beds, trying to trellis as much as we could, and we kind of fell into maker pipe when we were looking for an alternative to those EMT connectors. We've been using EMT conduit in the past, but the little connectors you buy at the big box stores that have set screws on them don't offer any structural rigidity. They're just designed as a connection for electrical wire to run through.
Right.
So I started looking, and about 2017 I found maker pipe. And at the time, I think all I had were these little T connectors, which are kind of the foundation, and I gather they're still a lot of the foundation of the system. And my imagination just kind of went wild when we redid our garden in 2022 with new garden beds. What I wanted to put together with this garden bed was an interconnected structure to cover the entire garden, and it is very sturdy. If I shake this bed, the very last bed will shake. I don't know if you see that or not, but
Oh, yeah.
the whole thing
Right.
is solid as a rock. And we made the structure by driving rebar into the ground to prevent horizontal movement of the legs, and then basically made a series of interconnected boxes out of the maker pipe for the core structure. And that's when I started coming up with all the various creations. And I still have them flowing in my head. I'm still working on them. One of the structures we make is a horizontal trellis where we put hog panel on top of the EMT. This is all held in place on one end with the T connector, and then whatever this cross connector, I don't know what this is called.
That's the 180, yeah.
180. So I just connect them, and I could go for a longer bed this way too with the 180s and the T connectors to carry the weight of the load that's on top of it.
How many times do you think, Nancy, you've redesigned this whole thing? Because this is quite a few years in the making.
Well, yeah, I would say 2 or 3 times, starting with wooden beds attached with U connectors and the cheapy connectors. Mm-hmm. So I had a pretty good idea when I got started what I needed.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that is, like I said, the overhead trellising. When you come over to this one, you might wonder why I wanted a lower trellis here.
I love the tunnels.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually did design this. If you look, there's some extra room there. Mm-hmm. We felt that if the headroom was not enough, we could raise the
as you're growing
tunnels.
You
but we're not growing. We're shrinking, right? We're old people, so the highest we're going to be is my husband, who's 5'7".
Or as the crop grows, you can.
Well, yeah. So we're okay with that. But being older, you know, I'm like, I want to minimize getting on ladders.
Uh-huh.
And by having a lower trellis here that's chest level, I can get in and I can spend hours hunting for squash bugs and whatever else I want. So see, I just carry stuff up to the trellis. It's all sitting there.
Easier on the back.
Easier on the back, and more importantly, not as much of a fall risk.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Because, you know, anytime you get on a ladder, you're inherently not as stable. Right. Fortunately, because I got the horizontal pieces, I can grab onto those for stability.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. One of the trellis things that we did is just this horizontal. Gives me a lot of growing room and a lot of strength. I couldn't do it without the connectors, though, because of these things are stronger, I think, than the conduit.
I see you have different ties and different supports. Is it pretty much you're adding support and kind of figuring out where you need to put supports throughout the season?
It is. An example of that is over here, this little kind of square-shaped trellis for the cantaloupes.
Yeah. Oh, neat.
that took me, what happened was, I did not think my cantaloupes would take off like they did. I had come up with a simple design. You can see there I was able to just use the conduit and lean the panel going up, and I just put a piece of conduit across for stability. So that's just to keep it from bending.
Yeah.
And then the cantaloupes kept growing and growing and growing. And so I made this, and this took about a little bit over an hour to assemble. All it was driving in a couple more rebars and, you know, playing with the T-connectors, and and then throwing some cattle panel on top.
Yeah. So the cantaloupes kept climbing, and then you needed some place for them to go, and then this was the addition.
And then the last addition has been over these tomatoes. These are sauce tomatoes. They're at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. And they had shade cloth over them when it was super hot. But I'm like, okay, these guys are growing, these guys are growing. Let me just throw cattle panel on the top, because now these guys, within the next couple of weeks, all these will be gone, and hopefully in canning jars. And the shade that those give over this garden bed will allow me to start my winter garden.
Oh, neat.
You know, the kale and the collards and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Something you were explaining earlier, and I didn't know this, was that there's cattle panel, there's goat panel, or how does it go?
There's cattle panel, which is like 50 inches by 16 feet.
Okay.
Now we cut it with bolt cutters.
Right.
There is hog panel, which is 34 inches tall by 16 feet and a lot cheaper than cattle panel.
Okay.
Now, if you want a Cadillac panel, you can get the 4-foot tall goat panel, which has nice, even grid. I think it's 4 inches by 4 inches.
Right.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
That's probably what you see a lot of fences made out of when people paint the stuff. We're like, this is functional. I have the money to spend on this kind of stuff, but I don't have the money to throw away on stuff that is just not as functional as what I got.
Yeah, sure.
The other one thing I did do though here is, you see I've got the 1/2 inch, and I put that in. This is a way of trellising tomatoes and peppers where you can run cords between 2 end posts, and it holds them up really nicely. Mm-hmm.
And you were explaining that this is polyester. Polyester. And then you have this little tightening device. I don't know what you'd call that.
Yeah, I forgot what they're called.
That's neat. And then this has a very low stretch and stands up to UV decently. And then you just wrap it around on the...
Yep, I just wrap it around and then tighten it. I will tell you that you actually can even tie this polyester quite well. Uh-huh. It will, a lot of ropes, it's hard to untie. I've become a master of the half hitch and the slip knot.
Nice.
And I'm going, it's okay, but this is quicker. Plus, if I want to work on something, I can undo it, take the cord out, retighten it. It's fast, it's easy. I mean, and this is all about functional. I would love to make this lovely and painted. And I do, on another project we got planned, we will paint the conduit. Mm-hmm. But this, I'm constantly moving connectors around. It's going to get beat up. There's aesthetic beauty and there's functional beauty. And to me, this is functional beauty. It works.
Yeah, it is beautiful. You've done a great job.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having us in your garden today.
Sure thing. Hey, real quick, I'm going to cut you guys some shishitos and get you some peppers.
Nice. We got the good stuff.